Today's show is all about happiness, how to achieve it, how to boost it, how to gain it, and how to live in a state of happiness. We've got an interview with the author Max Strong. It is time to get happy. Hi, I'm Marcus Freed. Welcome to Marcus Recommends, where we share great ideas and celebrate life. This is unscripted, unbiased, unrehearsed, and it's coming to you live from the studio here in Los Angeles. Today, Marcus recommends the book There's No App for Happiness by the writer and teacher Max Strong. I first met Max several years ago in London when he was teaching at a great yoga studio over there, and I was blown away. I'd heard terrific things about his teaching, and I've been very moved and touched and inspired by Max's teachings over the years. So his book, There's No App for Happiness, is subtitled How to Avoid a Near-Life Experience. And there are many tools and techniques and methods for really making sure that we can live in a state of joy, harmony, and peace, whether you're at home, at work, in relationships, with friends, whatever you're doing. The interview took place by telephone, so you're actually going to hear the recording of the interview. You can, in the meantime, head on over to Amazon.com, where you can buy the book, where you can buy his recording of the spoken word version of the book. There's also a Kindle format version. There are many ways to find happiness. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the interview. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Marcus. How are you this morning?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Oh, very good, thank you.
Good. So where have I called you at the moment? Where are you based right now?
Believe it or not, I'm at home in my office, and I just returned from Cleveland and Pittsburgh, leading some workshops out there to some very lovely people.
Lovely, lovely. And home is Oregon?
No, since we've spoken, my wife and I have moved to Maryland, about 45 minutes northwest of D.C.
Of course. I remember now. What took you across to Maryland?
Well, since I'm gone so much, my wife wanted to be closer to a major city. As an artist, she wanted to be, closer to galleries and museums and so on, and not 6 hours drive to the nearest big city, which is understandable. She also has family in this area, a family that we really like. And for me, I have 3 major airports to use now as opposed to one small regional airport. I'm halfway to Europe, where, as you know, I go about 3 or 4 times a year now. And
so you're closer to the action.
Yeah. And eventually I want to integrate more with the area where I live. And if I can be of any influence at all in this world, it seems like even the tiniest bit of influence, that Washington, D.C. would be a good place to possibly have an impact.
Which is a beautiful starting point. And I've got to say, I really loved reading your book. I've read it, I think, 3 times now. I did two cover-to-covers and then a third and fourth going through it with the bits I really liked. I actually began reading it on a very spiritual day, on Yom Kippur. It felt like the ultimate deep dive. So the book, There's No App for Happiness, How to Avoid a Near-Life Experience. And this seems to be really going, certainly your last book, A Life Worth Breathing, really stepped into much deeper territory than just the yoga, which that was certainly the context I met you in several years ago in London.
That's right.
And this seems this is really much part of a much bigger plan, as you say, going to Washington, seeing how these ideas can influence the world.
That's right. As you know, my work is rooted in many traditions, but also my own personal insights and experience in life. So I do use a lot of yoga and also Qigong, which is essentially Chinese yoga. But I also use other techniques and practical applications as well. But as you know, I'm doing more and more lecturing and giving writing workshops and so on also. The thing is about yoga, as fast as it is growing, I think it's not growing nearly fast enough, and I think it's actually slowed down. We could have a lot more people practicing yoga, but when I talk to people who are reticent to try it or have tried it once or twice perhaps and have not gone back, I find one of the primary objections is that there's a cultural aspect to it that they don't feel comfortable with, where teachers start adopting Hindu or Vedic symbols, language, etc. And this is not good for people who are practicing, Catholics, practicing Jews, practicing Muslims, etc., or atheists for that matter. So this is one of the objections people have, and the other primary objection is that there seems to be an emphasis on achieving postures, and a lot of the advertisements show people in these fantastic acrobatic postures. But if someone's 60 years old and has arthritis and has a bad knee, and their friends saying, come to yoga, and they say, well, I can't do that. That's not feasible for me to even try. And then they go to the class, and the teacher will demonstrate something like that, and then say, well, if you can't do that, here, you can do this. So they made it feel a little bit like a failure. They're kind of set up for failing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think if we could overcome both of those objections, which I think we would have a tremendous amount more people benefiting from the health benefits, psychological benefits, and overall happiness.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and I wasn't. There are so many different realms we can speak about. But on this particular point, in terms of the asana practice and the yoga culture, I wonder if one of the limits can be, in addition to the culture and this kind of win-lose or competitive mentality, which is obviously not what asana is about. If there are kind of some limits to often the way yoga is being seen as, it's often seen by people, and I've probably had this conversation, I know, hundreds of times almost, with people explaining that what we're doing inside the yoga studio or on the mat is just a yoga practice. It's called a yoga practice because it's practicing for life. And it's not who's got the best trikonasana or the best back bend.
That's right.
And I remember when I've seen you teach, you're not necessarily physically demonstrating, but you're really giving it to people, and so it can prime them for the rest of their life. So I wonder if the way that people are approaching yoga is almost completely off just because it's not integrated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And what would the remedy be when it demands a tremendous amount for teachers, because the teachers have to do their own spiritual, emotional, psychological work to be grounded to get into the world. So, is there an easy solution, or is it a huge mountain to climb to see that transition?
Well, since there's no central controlling faction or leadership in the yoga world, I don't think it can be approached that way, and maybe it's better for that. So I'm just doing what I can. I'm creating a completely new teacher training, which addresses this, a 200-hour teacher training, to put out teachers in the world who will teach more in the fashion, what I call the teaching from a universal platform, where it's secular. Therefore, people who are not religious are comfortable, but also the religious are comfortable. And I think the key is not to water down our work at all. Not to water down. Watering down means you dilute something to where it's just a remnant of what it could have been. What I try to do is distill the messages of these great practices down to their essence. So actually, it's more powerful, not less powerful. In other words, removing everything that's not necessary and everything which interferes with people connecting with it. Because yoga doesn't belong to India. Yoga was originated in India. That's true. Just like Christianity doesn't belong to Judea. That's where it originated. But,
right.
If you can't say, well, if you're not a minister from Judea, I'm not going to listen to you.
There was an article in the Washington Post 3 years ago from the head of a Hindu organization. It was about Hindus trying to take back yoga, which is kind of it's an irony.
It is. Well, that's the people who there are people who completely misunderstand yoga on every continent.
Right. And it's beautiful. It's also great to hear the way that you're speaking about Qigong, and there are so it's not an exclusive. Here's the list of the asana practice, that actually you can work in other systems within it, or rather, the word yoga is taking it back to its very, very broad root of there being thousands of applications of it.
That's right. That's right. I think the way where the world is now, where history has led us now, we really need to think about benefiting humanity in everything that we do, everything that we, in every way we possibly can, voting with our dollars, what organizations that we support, what political people we support, and what teachers we support. Everything we do is important to make sure this planet doesn't go completely amok. And practice, there's so much emphasis now on external things, particularly through the information technology boom, that we sometimes forget about the most essential thing, and that is nurturing and healing ourselves and educating ourselves so that we fulfill our highest destiny, that as we see it, that we possibly can. I mean, I think we're confusing now entertainment and happiness, because entertainment is fun and it's attractive, but once we turn everything off, the switches off of the video game or the TV, we're right back to being alone in a room with ourselves. And are we comfortable with ourselves, or are we suffering?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And as I say, I really love the book, and I'd like to ask a few things about this, because
Thank you.
It was it's tremendously rich. I mean, it just, whether it's the exercises, the descriptions, when you talk about how people have moved towards a state of loneliness and a state of isolation. I love the example you gave about how in America people used to have a big porch at the front of the house where they'd sit there because that was the coolest part of the day, and they'd talk to their neighbors. Then they got air conditioning units, so they moved inside and the porches got smaller. Then they got a big television and everyone sat around the television. They stopped really talking to their family other than past the remote control. Then everyone got iPads and phones and separate televisions, and now we're all locked up in our rooms walking around, and people are crashing cars, walking into lampposts, and even worse, just actually ignoring one another when they're in a social environment. So, Where do we begin? How do we get happiness? What are your favorite practices?
Well, I'm leading a workshop now where I ask a group of people 10 questions, one after the other, and I have them write down the answers. So when they go home, they have a lot of material about themselves that they didn't have when they arrived. One of the first things we need to start with is defining happiness for ourselves. In other words, I don't impose my idea of happiness on anyone, but I try to help be the catalyst for people to come up with a true definition and a recent definition, because our definition of happiness does change every 5 years or so. I mean, if you think back when you were 5 years old, being a pirate is not as important as it was when you were 5 years old.
No. We all love Jack Sparrow, though.
And a lot of people, you'd be surprised, maybe even shocked at the amount of people who can't answer the question when you ask them. And one might think, well, of course, it's kind of a deep question, but should it be difficult to answer? If I ask someone about their favorite sports team, they can blurt out information with encyclopedic knowledge quite frequently. Make my head spin with the amount of knowledge they know and the organization that they have in their brain. But if I say, what makes you happy? Well, they haven't thought about it lately. But it's the one thing that everybody says they want. Everybody wants to be happy, and everybody wants their children to be happy. Yet, we have almost no mentorship for it. When you go to school, there are no books for it. There are no classes on it. And most of us weren't taught anything about it from our parents. Some were, but not the majority. And that's the great irony. So to answer your question, the first thing is identify, what is it?
And this is in the section of your book when it's the book of your life on page 64. I assume it's right. those 10 questions. I was sitting up early this morning going through and writing down some answers, and I was really surprised actually, because when I wrote my question, when I tried to answer your question, how do you define happiness? I read about it, the feeling at the end of the day of having given 100%, having really put everything in, like planting seeds and watching them grow. And it made me think of this quote from Ecclesiastes. Sorry to go biblical on you, but it was the quote was along the lines of the sleep of the laborer is sweet, but a rich man's wealth doesn't bring him any rest.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that
Nice.
I've realized, that's really what makes me happy. So yeah, sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. And no one ever taught this. That actually, putting in a hard day's work, there's something really sweet about that. But also gratitude, feeling gratitude. But that takes work to start saying, okay, here's what I'm thankful for. It's not a practice we're really brought up with in our consciousness or mentored on.
Exactly. That's a beautiful quote, by the way. I like that very much.
Thank you.
The lacking of mentorship is interesting, and I thought a lot about this. And my theory is the reason we aren't taught much about happiness is because there is an unspoken agreement in society that what brings us happiness is success, financial success. So school, mentorship, etc., is all about becoming successful. And then, of course, the unspoken agreement is you'll achieve happiness if you make a great deal of money, or at least enough. But that doesn't seem to be the case. There are many books written about this now, where they have done many studies now, that have proved that once our basic needs are met, the amount of money we make above that does not affect our happiness.
There are not exponential returns.
No, there are no exponential returns at all. Yes, if you need medicine, you need money to get the medicine. Yes, you need dentistry. Yes, you need a roof over your head, hot water, proper food. But once all the needs are met, having an extra $50,000, there's no indication at all that this makes people happier. In fact, I had dinner very recently with a man who flies to Zurich to do banking work on a regular basis. He lives in Europe and flies to Zurich to deal with trust funds and wills and testaments and money managing for the extremely wealthy of Europe. And he told me that none of them are happy. They are all miserable.
Wow.
All of them. He doesn't know any extremely rich, happy people.
So Gordon Gekko was not correct in the 1980s when we were told that greed is good. It's a big deal though, Max, because I was thinking like all those films and certainly personally coming of age in the 80s, really looking at the messages that were coming in. In England, it was Thatcherism. In the States, it was Reaganomics. The films were like it was very much about that whole growth of Wall Street, and yet, almost for what? I mean, and you mentioned in the book about your early experiences as a screenwriter in LA when you were at a party, and you had this awareness that actually these people weren't necessarily friends. I don't want to misquote you on that, but what was the?
Yes, I mentioned that. I didn't, even though I knew people who were, some of them wealthy, many of them were famous in the movie business, and all of them were charming, and they had beautiful smiles. None of them were deeply happy. They all were living for the future, basically. If I can only get this movie or work with this director or make this amount of money or get more famous, then I'll be happy. Right now, I'm just in the process. And as long as we live like that, we will never be happy. There will always be something else to go after. Because we develop basically bad habits where if I have that, I'll be happy. Until I have that, I'm not happy. And I set perhaps a goal that I have very little control over. The acting world is a great example of that. Actors generally have to do something called audition, which means they walk into a room with the mindset of what do I have to do to make you like me? And they do that every week, sometimes many times a week. That's a horrible life. Now, some of them are lucky. They get the brass ring and they become so-called lucky. They become extremely successful. They make millions and millions of dollars. They have several homes, and they go in and out of rehab regularly. We can't ignore that part, but we like to, because we still believe that fame and wealth will make us happy. But you won't find a lot of really famous actors or rock singers, etc., that aren't struggling addicts, that aren't, that haven't been pulled out of their house in an ambulance for being unconscious several times. I mean, it's more common. And even the heroes, the James Deans, the Marilyn Monroes, how did they die? I mean, why did they die young? And look at their life; they weren't
Yes.
happy people.
Yes. Absolutely. And the question I've probably found the most challenging in some ways was the second question, when you ask who is the most joyful adult that you know. And these are brilliant questions. I mean, deceptively, it sort of looks deceptively simple at first glance, but actually,
Yes.
who's the most joyful adult that you know? Maybe I can ask you the question: who's the most joyful adult that you know?
You're asking me the
I'm
question?
asking you the question.
Oh,
I know that.
I'd be happy to answer you, but I don't think that you would know the people.
No, no,
They're
of
not
course.
famous.
Right, they're not famous. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what or actually, maybe I can ask you. So I won't know them, but like, what are the qualities you see in the happiest person you know? I know the qualities I'd like to see in someone. I could give an as if, but actually, when I really had to name it, it was really hard to pin down. I imagine someone who's older, who doesn't necessarily have much in the way of material, may or may not, but deals, may have some sad stories in their life, that's inevitable, but is really able to just show up fully each day and be completely present and keep smiling in an authentic way.
Oh, that's a really good point. And what are the qualities, from my observation, of a happy person? I do know people who are younger who seem to wake up in the morning happy, and I knew people who are maybe 50 or 60 who have that quality as well. But I would say the most constant characteristic, regardless of the age, is how they respond to negative circumstances. I'm thinking of one of my friends, for example, I was at a restaurant with, and a waiter came up to the table and was very rude, one of those almost Saturday Night Live sort of situations,
Yes.
and walked away. And I was a little offended. And I looked at my friend, and he just was laughing. And there was the difference. My reaction was offense that waiter was going to affect the quality of my happiness. Of course, then it would be his fault in my mind. Whereas my friend actually thought it was funny, and he laughed. He wasn't bothered by it at all. So it's how you respond to life, and some of that is habitual habits that we've obtained through our life. Some of it's imitating the way our parents responded. Responding just like our dad or just like our mom. But as an adult now, we need to learn to respond because of how we choose to respond, not because of any parent figure. We can't blame them anymore. We have to choose our own habits and how to respond to life. And if we can respond with laughter or smiles more frequently, not all the time. I mean, sometimes we see something that's heartbreaking, we can't laugh through that. But the little stuff, the constant little stuff that gets to us, to not let that get to us, is one of the arts of life.
Absolutely, and it's very profound, and moving. And in this light, what would you do you advise as a practice? Obviously, I mean, people should absolutely read the book, and I strongly recommend they pick up the book and do the exercises. But within this, if you had to say someone, just like someone might have I don't know, a 10-minute a day meditation, a 10-minute a day asana practice, a 10-minute a day happiness practice, or something like that. Obviously, do more and all of the above if they can make the time available. But if someone only has a shorter period of time, how do you sketch out or recommend a daily practice? Or just embedding this, or whatever tool or whatever technique you would prescribe for getting this ingrained and drilled in, so it becomes part of us.
Well, that's a great question. There's a few things we can do. Now be clear that when I speak as an advocate for some things, I'm not saying I don't believe in these other things. I'm just focalizing now on a particular couple of practices. I think having a daily breathing practice is really important. I've known so many people who have daily meditation practices, and I don't see any emotional shift in them. They do sleep better. They do focus better. There are benefits, no question. But sometimes they're just as unhappy as they were before. They respond just as negatively as they did before to life. I don't see any social growth, in terms of their relationships improving and so on. But if you have a daily breathing practice, even if it's for 10 minutes, I believe that has more of an emotional impact for personal growth, where we tend to be less reactive to negative circumstances. You're less likely to say something that you're going to have to apologize for. And even better, you're less likely to think it.
That sounds very helpful. Liability management.
Liability management, there you go. Yeah, so a daily breathing practice. Meditation is great too, but I would do that as a follow-up to breathing. Also, there's two other practices that I think are key and that are highly ignored in our society. One is the one you mentioned earlier, the practice of gratitude. And a simple way of doing that is once a day, pulling out your gratitude journal. That means you have a book or a pamphlet, some notebook that you can write down at least 5 things that you're grateful for every day or every night before you go to sleep. This constantly recalibrates us back to thinking in a positive way and feeling grateful. When we feel deeply grateful, it's amazing how close to the emotion of forgiveness it feels and love. They're very similar emotions. And then the other emotional practice is the practice of forgiveness. This is a practice, whether you're an atheist, deeply religious, anywhere in the middle, is a must-do practice every day. Because when we forgive others, we also forgive ourselves. When we forgive ourselves, we also forgive others. And we tend to be less angry people. One of the key things to remember about forgiveness is that the great benefit of forgiving someone else is what it does for us.
Right.
Nelson Mandela has the greatest quote, I think, ever on forgiveness. He said, if you hold anger towards someone, it's like swallowing poison and hoping the other person dies.
I didn't realize that was Nelson Mandela. And that's a very helpful quote. So when we drink the poison, we're waiting for someone else to die, but we're holding on to it. It just poisons our system.
That's right. So the practice of forgiveness is really spitting out the poison. It's cleansing ourselves of anger, of accumulation of anger. So breathing, gratitude, forgiveness are daily practices. And I'd like to offer one more thing for once we go out into the world and we're interacting with people. Treating people equally is really important, and I think we can forget to do that. In other words, are you polite to the waiter but not the busboy? Are you polite to the person that you just had the meeting with but not the person who takes your ticket in the parking lot? People who you don't have to be polite to. Are you polite, or are you polite and sweet at your yoga class, but then you drive like a demon? So you get behind the wheel and now you're a different person. So what I suggest is that we treat people as equally as we can and with kindness and respect. But also, when we make eye contact with people, to look in their eye and think, I want you to be happy. I want happiness for you. I want you to be healthy and happy. People feel it. They do.
Right. This is it's deeply powerful. It's a lot of work, this, Max. I mean, there is no app for happiness because you can't just open it on your phone and then rush off to the yoga class. But you've actually got to hold this space and hold this state. And I just certainly think moving around Los Angeles or any big city for that matter, if everyone was really able to hold this space, it would be something very, very different. And certainly on the freeways, where I was stunned when I got to LA. In London, people, if you indicate on a freeway, then on the motorway, then the person in the next lane slows down and allows you space to move into the lane. Here in LA, they speed up if you indicate. So, and so a friend of mine who's a Los Angeles native said that she doesn't indicate until the last moment because she doesn't want to reveal her hand. It makes driving in Italy look like a kid's playground. But so it would be quite powerful if we could get some of these shifts in.
That's right. That's right. And it has to be done on a personal level. If we really want to change the world, as I mentioned in my book, it has to be done on a personal level at this point. Humanity is a big bunch of individuals. You can't legislate what we're talking about. You can't enforce it with a police state. It has to be voluntarily done by a lot of people. And when we individually change, then we will have a new world, because we have enough technology for a near utopia on Earth now. I mean, think about just think about the internet. How easy it would be to work on the internet and to buy things on the internet if we didn't have to worry about security. It's the amount of work they do with our devices just to keep people from hacking them is extraordinary. That alone. But the crime is done by individuals. Corruption are individuals. Everything that brings us down as a species is done by individuals. So this work has to be done on an individual basis.
And that's practice. So on this, would you be open to talking me through a short breathing practice, just so people, because when people are listening, so whether in the middle of their work day or first thing in the morning, just somewhere to start?
Certainly.
Or recommend something.
Yes, as you know, I have a breathing DVD called Learn to Breathe, which is a 10-minute daily regime. But I'm happy to do something right now if you like.
That'd be lovely. And I'm also going to recommend your Learn to Breathe DVD as well, available on Amazon.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So sit on your chair without leaning against the back. So you're sitting more like on a stool. So your spine is straight, you're not leaning against the backrest. Now, place your hands on your thighs, palms up. Now, your spine, lift it by pressing the buttocks down and lifting your head up at the same time. You'll feel your spine grow a half an inch or so. And while you're lifting your spine, relax your shoulders. Lift spine, relax shoulders simultaneously. Now, scan your face. When I say scan, I don't mean with your eyes. You can't see your own face. But inwardly, through feeling, through awareness, focus on the muscles of the face, all of them, and relax them, especially the areas where you know you hold tension. For some of us, it's between the eyebrows. Some of us, it's around the mouth. Good. Now, however you like, take a deep breath. And when you exhale, sit even taller. Don't let yourself slump when you exhale. Now, sitting tall, place your hands, the palms of your hands, on the sides of your rib cage. So, not the front of the ribs, the sides where the seam of your shirts, the seams of your shirt are located. So your palms will gently touch the sides of your ribs. And when you inhale next, inflate your rib cage so that your ribs expand out to the sides toward your elbows. Your ribs will expand out to the sides toward your elbows. When you exhale, your ribs will contract back to the center of your body. Your hands are there just to verify this is happening. This is biofeedback. Continue breathing this way. Tall spine, relaxed shoulders. Even when you inhale, shoulders relaxed. Expand your ribs out to the sides when you inhale as much as possible. And when you exhale, allow your ribs to drift back toward the center of the body. And do this 10 times. If you know how to breathe, what they call in yoga ujjayi breathing, you can do that. If you don't know any breathing techniques, since I can't show you anything over the internet or the radio, you can breathe how you like, but expand the ribs and contract the ribs so your lungs fill totally full, and then they empty completely. Let me know when you've done 10 of these.
I'm still going.
You have a good long breath.
Years of the yoga. Just 2 more to go. Okay, I'm complete.
Okay. That is a real basic way to begin to not only do deep breathing, but be aware of what part of me is doing the breathing. In other words, where do I direct the breath into my body? Our rib cage is designed to expand and contract, making room for inflated lungs. And so this is a way to teach yourself to start inflating the lungs completely full.
And it feels a lot calmer, and it's really got my brain a lot more soft and feeling in my body, and just actually more aware. The proprioceptors able to take in more information from a calmer place.
Yes.
That's beautiful, Max. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. I think there are many more topics to discuss, but maybe we'll do a second interview at some point. If you'd be open to it, thank you. One idea I wanted to ask was really, which I particularly, it really got me fired up, and I've been quoting lots to people. I'm going to quote you. It's from page 100 in the book, and this is applicable. A lot of people I'm working with these days are conscious entrepreneurs, people who are working in businesses with a higher purpose, but come up against some kind of creative block, really needing to sharpen their creative edge, knowing they've got more to offer, knowing they're really able to accomplish a tremendous amount, but for whatever reason there are things holding them back. So I'm helping people sharpen their creative edge and cut through the obstacles, cut through the blocks, and carve out some success and really allow their inner gifts to shine. And to quote you, we have a bright light within us with which we are meant to shine out into this world, and we can become brighter still by removing the armor that is covering our light. Courage is what we need to take our own armor off, and courage is what is something we need to keep others from covering our light.
Yeah.
And so this, in addition to when you discuss on page 46, when you describe everyone as being lighthouses, and you also ask the question in terms of your 10 questions about our inner terrorist, our inner saboteur, the way we can actually stop our gifts getting out there. I know I've conflated various different ideas. This has certainly really got me on fire. I love this. I just wonder if you might have, where you might go with this, how you might expand on it, so people can really begin to let their light shine when they're held back out of fear or held back for whatever reason. What people can do in this light.
Well, the first thing to do is to carve out some time in the day. I mean, we have to start from the very beginning, no matter what we're going to do. I mean, if you decide you want to buy a car, do you have a place to park it? I mean, you have to look at all the practical parts of any decision. So if you're going to have a practice, you actually have to have time for the practice. We have to start there. And most people will say, no, I don't have time. I'm far too busy. Yet, the average American watches television 4 hours a day. So many people play video games every day. So there is time to be had if it's important enough. So we figure out, first of all, where we're going to purchase our time. In other words, trade. We're going to barter. I'm going to give up watching football in exchange for time to do a practice that will change my life, because so far football hasn't changed my life.
And you gave up a serious football hobby.
Well, not real serious. I knew a lot of people who were more fanatical than I was, but I definitely, every football season, watched at least a couple of games a week and would read the sports page and talk football with friends, and I enjoyed it, and there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not saying that there is, but when it came time to where I needed more time and I didn't see where I was going to get it, I knew that I had to barter for it. I had to give something up. because there's only so many hours in the day. So I chose to give up football because it didn't really improve my life. It was just entertainment. And I'll never regret that decision, because after a short time I really didn't miss it anymore. And what I got in return was priceless. So first you need to have some time. And then with that time, do some self-study. Self-study means asking yourself questions and looking at your habits that you've acquired through your life based on circumstances. And so many of us have had traumas, or multiple traumas, through childhood, through adolescence, through our teenage years, soldiers going to war, but plenty of people have post-traumatic stress syndrome who've never been on a battlefield. And we don't realize how it affects us. We don't even realize what kind of expression we have on our face when we walk out the door. But sit on a park bench and watch people walk by, and that's when they're most relaxed. They're at the park. And you'll see so many frowns, so much bitterness in the face, so much sourness. And they might not even be feeling that. Not right now. They might be in a good mood, but their face is frozen in this expression based on a daily habit that they have acquired from earlier in life. Go to a business district and it's even worse. I see this in airports all the time. Businessmen and women waiting to get on the plane, and they all look like they just as soon punch your face in and say good morning to you.
Yes.
And then we wonder why people don't talk to us. The body posture, the facial expression on so many people says, stay away from me. That no one's going to talk to them. No one's going to approach them. So then that person goes to a party, dresses up very nicely, stands with a drink in their hand. They can't understand why no one's coming up and talking to them. It must be that I'm not physically attractive enough. That must be it. No, that's not it. It's because everything about you habitually says, stay away from me. And you don't know how to switch it off. We see photographs of ourselves taken at parties. We think, oh, that looks terrible, that looks terrible. That's because that's how we look most of the time. Those are the pictures we throw away. How we really look. Not the ones where we're chewing, of course.
Right.
But the other ones, that's how we look. What we like to believe, we look the same way we look when we look at ourselves in the mirror and relax our face and smile. But that's not how we look most of the time. So the very beginning, I think, of practice of self-awareness is, what expression do you hold on your face? How do you stand? When people speak to you, when they try to be kind to you, do you take a moment to respond? I was on an airplane recently. I was boarding. I was near the front, and I got to watch an entire plane board because I was the first one on board. 100 people walked in, and this very nice flight attendant, an unusually nice one, was standing there saying good morning to every single person that got on the plane. And you know that most people didn't respond.
They were just on their phones and walking straight past, at a guess.
Or no phone and walking straight past. And after the plane boarded, I asked her, I said, on any given day, what's the percentage of people who respond to you when you say good morning? And then she sadly said about 50%. She said some regions are a little more polite than others. And I thought that was terrible, and I bet everybody who got on that plane thinks they're a nice person, if you ask them.
Right.
So we have to study our behavior and really know what we're doing in this world and how we're behaving with our fellow man and woman, and start with the very basics.
And this means looking into the darker parts, the shadow areas where it's not necessarily going to be comfortable. Probably will be uncomfortable. We have to see the parts where we have to do the work.
That's exactly right.
The flip side of the happy, clappy spirituality.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Most of us do not know what our habits are that, as I say in my book, comprise our inner terrorist. The person that has the most power to destroy our life is the one who looks at us from the mirror every day. That's the person we potentially have the most control over and can do the most damage, and that's where we have to focus. How can I emphasize my gifts, and how can I mitigate my bad habits, hopefully maybe even lose my bad habits and create new, better habits? again, if you look at the people that you consider happy, maybe a barista at a coffee shop that you go to, you think, that young lady, she's always happy. And she's a barista. That's not a great job, by the way. And a lot of people are probably rude to her or him every day. Yet, they're one of the happiest people you know. So it can be done, but it has to become a priority. There's not going to be any magical moment where we just become happy. It does take some self-awareness, self-study, and some work.
That's a beautiful point to close the interview with. And that's really lovely, in that rather than going and barking our orders at the barista for our gluten-free, sugar-free, caffeine-free, triple latte, dairy-free, actually look in their eyes and see who the happy people are, and study and breathe, self-study, breathe, and go for that happiness.
That's exactly right, or we're going to be happiness-free as well.
Beautifully said. There is no app for happiness. How to avoid a near-life experience from Max Strom, available on Amazon, along with also Max's latest DVD, Learn to Breathe, and the early books and the earlier DVDs are also absolutely worth a read. So thank you so much, Max.
Oh, thank you so much for your time and your insight. I really enjoyed your questions and speaking to you as always.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And we can where can people find out more about your yoga teacher training?
I have a website that's called maxstrom.com, maxstrom.com, and information on all of my events can be found there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Mark.